Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning, James. How are you this morning? Good morning, Steve.
Hey, good morning. How are you guys?
Very well. Hey, good morning, Scott. Glad to have you here.
Good morning, Brent. Thank you.
Like that background, Steve. Looking good.
Yeah, we got a message
Hey,
down
Steve.
from corporate. We needed to be more professional. Hi, Sue. We need to be more professionals. So,
Go.
yeah, like we had to dress for Zoom calls and stuff now. So I'm really
You
trying
look
to-
like a real tech boss, Steve.
That's right.
I like the
well, good,
solid
good.
black,
Yeah.
fancy background.
You should have wore that green shirt so we could have key chromed you out, and that would have been fun, like the newscasters, the weather guys do. Good morning, Cassidy. How are you this morning?
Good. Excited to be here. I don't have a fancy background though.
It's all right. Kitchens and living rooms are acceptable.
Well, join in from my very white bedroom. It looks like I'm like kind of in a prison, but I promise I'm not.
No worries.
Brent, I see you you're in the office. How are things down there?
It is kind of quiet around here. You know, our campus is built of a bunch of call centers, so they're all pretty much sheltering in place right now, and we're starting to have a little bit of turnout. We'll probably see it increase in the next couple of weeks. I think we're going to be opening up our food hall here this maybe into the week or first of next week, so that'll help too when people have a place to go for lunch and get a coffee in the morning. But it's up to the tenants to decide what they want to do. We just are going to try to provide a space where we're keeping things clean and hopefully bring an environment that they can work with. Good morning to everyone on Facebook. Glad to have you here.
I think we are live on Facebook,
Yeah.
hopefully. And I think we've let everyone in from the waiting room, so I think we can go ahead and get started. We may have a few people join late. But thank you everyone for being here this morning. It's a great group. I definitely see some longtime 1 Million Cups lifers, as well as some new names and faces in the room. So as always, glad to have all of you. Before we get into our speakers for the day, just a quick intro of 1 Million Cups for those of you that this might be your first time. 1 Million Cups is actually a national organization managed by the Kauffman Foundation. And we have 1 Million Cups chapters all over the country that meet on Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. over 1 million cups of coffee to help learn about entrepreneurs and support entrepreneurs in their communities. So here in Oklahoma City, we've been running this show for, gosh, maybe 5 years now. We meet on the second Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. In normal life, we meet in person at Star Space 46, the tech co-working space in downtown OKC, but we are glad to be back for our fourth virtual event. I think this is our fourth one. And really grateful to you guys for continuing to show up for our virtual meetups. So each time we meet for 1 Million Cups, we have 2 entrepreneurs from the community that talk about their businesses as well as their entrepreneurial stories with the goal of generating a lot of discussion and feedback from our community attendees who are here today. So what you'll see today is each speaker will give a roughly 10-minute presentation, and then we'll open it up for Q&A with the audience. If you want to ask questions, you can unmute yourself and ask them directly, or you can type them in the chat and we'll get those answered. But you are strongly encouraged to engage with us by asking questions to the entrepreneurs. It's really kind of the ultimate value of 1 Million Cups is these entrepreneurs being able to interface with their community. So we hope you'll engage in that Q&A time. After both presentations, we'll wrap up by 10 a.m. for sure, if not earlier. And then I do want to do a special shout out to Rack 59, who is one of our sponsors for 1 Million Cups. So Brent, if you want to wave, we'll be doing a giveaway for coffee and donut gift cards, which we usually have in person, but gift cards this morning at the end of the presentation. So we'll ask a trivia question that will be something you'll hear throughout the speakers' presentations today, and the first person to answer it correctly in the chat will win the gift cards from Rack 59. So that's the show. It's fast and easy. We try to keep it that way for really just having the ultimate value add for both the audience and entrepreneurs. So with that, I will hand it over to Nathan and Amber, our first speakers today with OK Robotics.
Morning.
Morning. Hello, I'm Amber, and this is my husband, Nathan. And today we wanted to just share a little bit about our crazy journey with Oklahoma Robotics. So some of you may know us from years ago, about 12 years ago. We started Oklahoma Robotics as a club just for robotic enthusiasts. And this was way back, with the different co-working spaces in the city. So this is in the Oklahoma City COCO era. We did a couple classes like light painting at the COCO, and also just when we were an enthusiast club group. We also demoed at the state fair. At that time, we just had our little hobby projects like a remote controlled lawnmower, a Wii whiteboard. We hauled in like a
CNC
the CNC router. So anyway, it was a ton of fun. We had a really fun group, and we made a lot of connections with that. But over the years, the projects actually started turning commercial. Nathan connected with a guy out of Dallas named Darius, who's on our team, and he was doing a lot of work with solar. So one of the projects that was super interesting they did was they converted an Acura Integra, gas car to electric, filled the thing with batteries. And now you gotta remember, this was before Teslas were on the road. So this was, I just remember that first moment of not hearing an engine. So it's really cool. So those were the type of projects they started, evolving into. Another project that we did here in Oklahoma City, Dallas, was the cityscapes, or some of y'all may remember, they were just gigantic Lego replications of Oklahoma City and Dallas. For the Dallas one, we went down and Oklahoma Robotics put in a little mini Lego fleet of the cars that would drive through the city. They were going on magnetic track, and then they would have like these little copper strips to help recharge. So just really amazing, unique projects they were working on. And then about 9 months ago, would you say, we got the big project in. That's when we started building the team. We brought in Bo Schwabe. We brought in a lot more of the team you see today. And I think at that point, Nathan and I decided that he was going to quit the day job and, take this full time. And so that's definitely been the crazy next step in our journey. Like I said, we have Bo Schwabe now on board, and he's here today to help answer any questions y'all have. He does design circuit boards, was involved with Parallax, with microcontrollers. He writes firmware. And then, at one point our team got big and we outgrew the little shop that we were in. And so Nathan signed a lease and we moved into a bigger shop in southeast Oklahoma City. And then 1 week after signing that lease, everything shut down. So this definitely had a crazy new chapter to everything. And since then, we've also added in Patrick Cervello for software. We also have an intern. She's studying robotics out at OU right now. Her summer internship was canceled, so she just went ahead and just joined us. So definitely a new person on the team. But what I want to talk to, so that was our story, but talk about, sort of describe who we are, you know, a lot of us are displaced with work. We've been hit by the pandemic. We're definitely feeling that. But, and we're also looking for opportunities. But it's in this time that, you know, the economic downturns that new markets and new opportunities pop up. And so sort of to go into what Oklahoma Robotics is about, you know, we're definitely looking for these opportunities. So, so there's three primary goals with Oklahoma Robotics. When you think about robotics, you may think Jetsons, you know, just the little robotic person helping you out. But robotics is actually a collection of disciplines. We've got mechanical, electronics, firmware, software, user interface, user experience, business development. Over the years with these different projects, we've seen that you need to have this holistic view of robotics with all these different components. So you're not only designing a project, but you can take it to the market and make it successful. So we want to be here for the entrepreneur and startup community to give you access to engineering, electronics, this sort of different design, not just software development, but actually the physical project or products that go with that. And Oklahoma Robotics definitely specializes in prototype design, and then integration of software and all these different components. So we also want to be a resource for the entrepreneur community. So we have all this varied experience with our team, you know, hardware, software, firmware, and we want to help anyone who's interested to understand prototype development and design and help you have that big picture so you know how to take things into the manufacturing process, get into the market. So we offer a free hour of consulting. So if you do have the idea, if you're working with a startup or no matter where you are in prototype or startups, you know, we're here to help. And so just give us a call and, you know, we'll sort of get you on the right path. So, and then lastly, you know, I've really just been seeing lately, you know, Oklahoma is our home, and we want to see Oklahoma to develop and keep tech talent in the state. And I mean, lately we're seeing a lot about, you know, trying to bring in Tesla to Tulsa. But it's like we also have a ton of smaller groups like Oklahoma Robotics and different tech companies just right here in the state. And so I think later on we'll provide links and stuff. We're looking, you know, to get the word out about what we're doing. We want to get in touch with any entrepreneurs, VCs, whoever needs help or maybe with this particular area of prototype development, engineering, electronics.
Right. Basically, if you guys need something made, we're here to do that. I mean, that's what we do. You bring us an idea. For instance, we have a large project that's shipping out this afternoon. It's going to take up a 48-foot semi-truck. You know, it's a large format modular robotics platform, and it's going to Georgia. So anything from very, very tiny things like the self-driving cars for the Lego City all the way to, you know, semi-trailer sized things, we can do any of that. We designed all of the hardware, the mechanical components, the electronics, the circuit boards, the programming, etc. for that system in under 4 months, fabricated the prototype, and now it's shipping. So, I mean, it's a pretty large project. We've got 9 folks on the team now. We can take on any size project you need. So.
And with that, you know, we want to open up to any questions you guys have. So, and like I said, I have Nathan here, and then also Bo as well.
I'm going to add to the 9-month project. You know, we kind of started that. You know, that was a huge project, and when we started that, I had known Nathan for quite some time, and I had reached out to a friend of mine that I had done some work with in the past, and I said, do you have any projects that you need help with? And he's like, well, I don't, but my brother does. And the analogy that I'm going to give due to NDA reasons, this guy said, he said, well, if somebody came to you and said, could you build a car wash from the ground up? Could you do it? And I'm like, well, that's a huge project. It's not rocket science, but I could put a team together and we could get the job done. And so that's when I reached out to Nathan, and things started escalating from there. We put a team together, got everything going, and like I said, you know, within a few months, and now we're shipping something to Georgia. But you know, I don't want to pigeonhole myself or anybody on our team into one particular area that they can do. We have many talents. We wear many hats in what we do from start to finish, and it's, you know, I've had a hobby in electronics since I was 12 years old. I worked for National Semiconductor. I worked for a company called Parallax. I've worked in prosthetic research and development. And so there's a whole wide area of expertise that not only that I have and that Nathan has and Amber, but everybody on the team has very unique characteristics and traits that they can apply to any project that comes along. So we're good about putting our heads together and getting a job done.
Hey guys, thanks for the presentation. I'll ask a question. So I think this is super cool. I think probably a lot of people and companies don't totally understand the potential of these types of technologies in their business. So specific to Oklahoma, what do you guys see as the biggest potential use cases that aren't already being done, or the industries that are most ripe for innovating using robotics technologies?
Well, honestly, right now, with everything going on with the COVID situation, there's a lot of use case for more automation in almost every industry where people are in contact with one another. You know, robots don't get sick, so it's not hard to imagine scenarios where a lot more things are handled robotically, or even just through additional automation processes. I mean, there's endless possibilities in terms of food growth, farming, agriculture. I mean, food handling. Even at the drive-through window, if you think about it, why isn't there a robot handing you your sandwich? I mean, why do we need to have a person in a face mask breathing on that? From that type of perspective. But I mean, even without that, there are millions of applications that need to be filled with more automated processes. There's, you know, humans are doing a lot of things, and again, not to take away people's jobs, but there's difficult jobs that are menial work that are still being done by people that could easily be done by automation platforms and robotics. And that's where we're seeking to fill those needs.
Well, thanks.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Nathan. When people have concerns about robotics taking over roles or positions that people currently hold, how do you respond to that, and how do you encourage the workforce to maybe adopt or embrace the future of robotics in the workforce?
Well, quite honestly, you know, we rely on robotics systems to do a tremendous amount of repetitive and menial tasks. These are things that, you know, are going to cause people to develop carpal tunnel or other kind of physical problems. So back pain, all these things. So really, my focus is on relieving the manual labor efforts from folks. And let's get our workforce retrained. Let's get them into the tech fields. Let's get them to be able to install and service and help build more automated systems. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of jobs that are going to be available in the maintenance of these robotics platforms. You know, we're humans, we learn. Robots don't really learn yet. I know there's AI systems and all that out there, but it's still just programming algorithms. Computers don't really understand what they're doing. So humans need to learn. They need to learn to expand their minds and improve themselves and do things that are more mental and technical instead of just repetitive manual tasks.
I have a question, kind of following up on that. Something that, okay, also for everyone who's on here, I just discovered that if you are muted and you press the space bar, it unmutes you, which I think is incredible. I love it. I'm a UI person, so I think that's a really fun side note. But so kind of following up on that, something, do you feel like cultural, like that kind of view is probably like the biggest roadblock with robotics? I'm also like a really big fan of like, I also don't think that robotics are gonna, take over the world in my lifetime, knock on wood, but that's like something that I found personally is, I try and compare it to like the Industrial Revolution or like agricultural revolution. It's like, this is just like a new wave of things, but I was just wondering what your perspective is.
Well, it is definitely an impediment. Honestly, the biggest impediment that I see from my position is just a lack of funding and interest in developing these things. I think people don't really understand what can be done in terms of improvement to their process flow or their manufacturing or, not even manufacturing, just everyday things that need to be done. You've seen the advent of the robotic vacuum sweeper, right? So, I mean, that's probably, the Roomba is probably the most common robot out there now. And people are starting to adopt that because it's cool and it's convenient. And I think there just needs to be a better understanding of what robotics can do, both in our homes and our businesses and all kinds of things. I mean, any application that you guys want to bring us, we can talk it through and figure out a way to improve a process, right? There's always room for improvement on a process. Applying robotic technology to something can save a tremendous amount of money, but the upfront development costs are very high. That's kind of the trade-off there. You've got to put it in a significant investment to develop something that then will pay for itself many times over down the road.
Hey, this is Jeffrey Simpson. Wanted to ask a quick two-part question. First, from your basis or your start in community education, what have you continued on from that origin? And then the second part is, from that, had you created any curriculum that you were sharing with either colleges, high schools, junior high level?
Curriculum, no. Honestly, there's some really great robotics curriculums out there and robotics programs for students. We actually participated in FIRST Robotics from the first LEGO League all the way up through the FRC programs, which is the FIRST Robotics Challenge. They have some amazing stuff out there that's a great foundation for students to be involved with. I don't see the need personally to start a new program. There's a good number of programs out there. For folks that don't have it in their schools, I mean, there's all kinds of private companies that are doing that. I do, set up appointments to go and speak to students at schools that are in these programs from time to time to help encourage them to be more interested and continue in that aspect. And as Amber talked about earlier, we do have internship programs where we try to bring 1 to 2 college level students in every year to participate in our internship program.
Well,
I've actually been doing that.
Solar car.
Well, yeah, that was a while back, but we did work with a group of students at a special needs school to help develop a solar car from scratch for a race program that they were participating in. That I think that's been it's been a few years since we did that, but still over the years, I mean, we've been doing this for at least 8 years now as a business, although it was part-time for everybody, but we've always taken an interest in that side of the community and helping the kids.
Great. And then a follow-up for those internships, were they more computer science related or more engineering related?
Well, as Bo pointed out, we do everything here. So we will take folks that are studying programming and teach them the mechanical side. We also take folks that are studying mechanical engineering and get them on computers. I mean, our interns do everything from building machines to running our lasers, running our prototyping machines. We teach them how to weld. We teach them how to work with tools, hand tools, power tools. 3D printing, CNC machining, manual machining, all kinds of stuff. I mean, we do everything, literally everything you can imagine if it involves producing something here. So, I mean, we've even got a guy that specializes in leather work and helps us with, you know, gaskets and seals and flexible parts that need to be made and different things of that nature. So just about anything that can be made, like I said, we've got the skills here to make it, and we like to make sure our interns are well-rounded in that area.
Awesome. I think we've got time for maybe one more question for OK Robotics, if anyone has one.
I've got one more question, Nathan. If people have an interest in getting involved with the robotics community here in Oklahoma City or Oklahoma, what's the best place for them to plug in? Do you guys have meetups? Do you have groups that get together consistently?
Brent, unfortunately, right now we don't. We've been dealing with some of that through some of the maker spaces and through some of the co-working centers. However, with everything that's going on, pretty much all of that has stopped. We do have folks in here from time to time, fairly selectively, unfortunately, because we can't risk getting everybody sick. But we're here to help with anybody that wants to do anything, even if it's a small project, you know, even if it's something you're working on from home. We've got a lot of folks here that just like to help out with whatever.
Awesome. Well, we like to end each 1 Million Cups presentation by asking the speakers, what can we as a 1 Million Cups community do to help you guys moving forward?
Definitely get the word out. I think that's where we're at right now, is just let people know that may be interested, and you know, we love to talk to you, we love to help out. And we'll put some links to email and contact information. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and just feel free to call or email us.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just, you know, finding people that need projects done. As a development shop, we're really at the mercy of people that need things developed, and you know, without big manufacturing contracts or anything like that to generate long-term revenue, we tend to jump from one project to another as they come. So we can go sometimes some bit of time between projects. So it's always great to have projects, even if they're small ones, to fill in. So, you know, bring things our way and let's see how we can help each other.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I will say before we transition to the next speaker, I didn't realize you all had been here in OKC and involved in the tech community for so long. And I must say that I remember Cityscape, the Lego Cityscape at OKC Cocoa, and I had no idea that was you guys. So it's very cool. Yeah. I feel like really come full circle here. Awesome. So you guys go ahead and feel free to drop whatever resources you want in the chat, and we will switch gears to our next presenters, Morgan and Todd, with the steam engine. I think this is a really great flow between our two topics today. We talked a little bit about STEM education, and now you're going to get to hear from some of the people doing it for kids here in OKC. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys. Feel free to share screen and take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you, Susan and Brent, and the rest of the team behind 1 Million Cups. We're very honored to be here today, and we couldn't agree more that this is a great segue into our nonprofit as well. From some of the information that OK Robotics had put out there and the team there, we couldn't agree more. And just to be very quick with introductions, my name is Todd Waters. I'm a founding board member with the Steam Engine, and I'm here with our founder and partners, Morgan and Marcus Jones as well. And then we've got our additional team on the call. So to kind of frame the issue that we try to, that we're really focused on abating is really Oklahoma focused, and then to scale this, we're focused on Oklahoma City community, and then we have a plan to scale across smaller communities across the state, and then nationwide as well. But what we focus on in the theme for our mission is that Oklahoma's workforce as a whole has a significant gap in technically qualified individuals as a population. And so when we talk about addressing this technical gap, you know, we talk about things like attracting the Teslas and expanding with Amazon, and I know Lockheed Martin is here, but expansion with these technical workforce groups and corporations to provide more work or employment opportunities for technical workers in the state is a circular problem that we have. When we look at the core issue here, we're looking at Oklahoma youth by the age, or just youth in general, by the age of 8 to 13, have either in their minds accepted that they could make a technical career out of some of these things they enjoy with science, you know, technology, engineering, math, and incorporating arts in that, or they've already disqualified their ability to even be successful in these areas, which is the tragic piece of this. So you really jump into the macro problem. If we're trying to attract these large corporations to employ more technical workers in the state, the biggest issue that we are getting feedback on is the available workforce to fill these roles. And we're not talking about smaller isolated groups, because there are some very technical individuals and technical startups in the state, and I don't want to take away from that. But as a whole, the trend here is that we see many individuals coming to Oklahoma for the luxury, the low cost of living, the low tax environment, the beautiful things that are here in Oklahoma for those of us that are very familiar with it. But then they take this technical training and in large, they take this out to the East and West Coast. They take this to other areas that they see larger opportunities for themselves. So we're trying to retain this investment that we've made in our youth. And this is reciprocated where we speak with, you know, we've spoken with Sean Copeland, the Secretary of Workforce Development for the state, who's tasked with attracting the Teslas and so on. And the biggest problem they have is they have so many open positions they can't fill, not only with local students that graduate, but even international students that come to the state and then take that knowledge elsewhere. And so for me, I've traveled extensively for business all over the nation. And I chose to come back here to raise my children here in the state for multiple reasons. But when I look at, you know, they're middle school age children. I have 2 daughters, and when they have STEM activities, they may have good intent, and this is not a slight on Oklahoma educators, but the resources are so limited, and we're aware of this. One of the issues that we see is that to take this and really have it set in the minds of our youth, you have to have mentors, you have to have consistent programs that are designed around really assessing how well the student is going to understand this. You know, Francis Tuttle does a great job for the high school age students, getting them into technical programs, but they've met with us several times, and we started a very good partnership there that they understand they need a strong set of mentors and programs to get children from that 8 to 13 age group into that pipeline as well. And that's really where we're focused. And so I don't want to take too much time on our intro, but I'm going to pass this over to Morgan, and she's going to talk a little bit more on our mission, our process to address the issues, and then our ask as far as tiered levels of funding and donation that we're seeking to make this really happen. So with that, Morgan.
Thank you, Todd. I will reiterate what he said. I think having heard from Oklahoma Robotics and all that's going on in their world, and this need for retraining or differently trained workforce, this is a great segue. The students that we talk to, most of them have decided whether they're good at science and math before they ever leave middle school. And really what that means is we've identified these 3 primary gaps that students sort of internalize, and that's an awareness gap. They don't understand how STEM education or STEM careers are relevant to their life once they leave the classroom. You know, they do a science experiment or they do a project in school, but they don't see how that translates into a career down the road. A lot of students have a belief gap, and that is that they don't see others who look like them in roles like we talk about in STEM. And so they don't build that confidence in themselves because they don't see how they can fit into that world. And then they have a competence gap because they aren't given opportunities to build the skills that they need to be successful. And we talk about skills in terms of really the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, creative thinking, and communication. And because there's so much of a focus on content knowledge in K through 12. And so we want to focus on applying content knowledge while building skills. Again, students decide at a much earlier age than anybody ever thought whether they're good at science and math. Most of the STEM investment that has gone on in the last 15 to 20 years at the federal and state level has been at the college and high school levels of education. And what we're learning is that students opted out of science and math way before we've started those investments. And so we need to start investing in kids in kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade, so that by the time they're 13 or 14, they've said, oh, I can do this. And they continue down that path and choose those harder courses when they hit high school. So the STEAM Engine is a new organization. We were founded last September. I'd been working on the concept part-time for about 2 years and then quit my job in April of 2019 to pursue this full-time. But we provide youth education programs to build 21st century skills, and that's so that we can develop a talent pipeline and close the STEM workforce gap. And one of our major focuses is to try to reach kids that are in groups or populations that are underrepresented in STEM. And for those of you who are familiar, that's going to be primarily girls and children of color and people in rural areas. And I think that's a really prime opportunity for the state of Oklahoma in terms of workforce development, is how do we get those rural schools, rural communities, and help them train students to be part of our technical workforce. There's a lot I want to cover here. So our primary stakeholders in who we serve are going to be our youth and families. And we do that primarily through what we call our 8-week club model. Students spend an hour and a half once a week learning something, having a connection to a STEM mentor, and then applying skills to a project so that at the end of the 8 weeks, they have something to show for it, both in terms of skills, relationship building, and a tangible product, whether that's a digital artifact like a website or a game, or a physical product like a roller coaster, and you'll see an example of that here in a second. We also want to work with educators, and we haven't moved into that phase yet, but we want to work with educators to develop programs that they can take into their classrooms, as well as to provide them with a stream of STEM professionals that can come in and inspire kids to pursue STEM careers, to show them how what they learn in school relates down the road to a potential job. And then we want to build a STEM ecosystem, and this may be something you've heard thrown around, but there's great pockets of STEM ecosystems across the state, but haven't necessarily seen a full cohesive effort to build a STEM ecosystem that's really that pipeline that starts in school, connects students into the higher education, whether that's technical training or college, and then connects it to the pipeline, and really to build all of those relationships so that corporations, schools, nonprofits, and other groups are all supporting one another to really elevate this workforce and connect all those gaps that we've identified. And the primary way that we do our work at the moment is through partner sites. So rather than going out and recruiting kids in a sort of enrollment model, we find partner sites that already have captive audiences of kids and come in and provide programming. And then eventually we want to purchase what we call a maker mobile, which would allow us to take equipment out into the community that can't be experienced either virtually, which is how we've been delivering a lot of our programming, or can't be physically brought into a partner site. And then eventually our vision includes a series of community maker spaces that are really kid-focused across the state of Oklahoma to give us a venue for offering our programming and exposing kids to STEM activities and equipment that they don't have access to in school or outside of school currently. So a couple of programs that we've done so far. We finished a Girls Who Code program in May. It was a 16-week program. We were able to complete half of it in person, and then got to pivot online, which was unexpected, but we learned a lot from it. And actually it prepared us to move into our second program, which had been supposed to start after spring break. but because our students didn't have access to the technology, we waited until summer. And we are working with our Neighborhood Empowered, which is a community group out on Northwest Expressway. They serve about 25 families in some low-income housing. And the older students, 3rd grade and up, are participating in a roller coaster physics class. We've provided them with 2 kits of parts that they get to manipulate during our online course. And you'll see here that they've started building their roller coasters out of pool noodles and cardboard tubes. We built a Newton's cradle using bouncy balls and string. And then the younger students are receiving 4 boxes that we call STEAM Busy Bins, and they are manipulative activities that encourage them to explore the physical properties of the material. We present them with design challenges, and then they really just get a chance to play in an open-ended way that's not prescriptive in terms of projects. And that's one thing that's really important to our method, is that we don't provide a recipe for what the end result is supposed to be. We try to present them with the skills they need, and then ask them to make something unique unto themselves, which for a lot of these kids is a foreign concept. That's not what most K through 12 education is about at the moment, just because of the way our testing and expectations for curriculum are built, and to give them this open-ended opportunity to design what they want. For some of them, it's overwhelming, and especially found that in the coding club. But these kids were like, when do we get to open our boxes and start building? And they were super excited to jump into that just yesterday. So this is the plan. And we've developed a phased approach, and that really just recognizes that we're new and we need some time to scale up to build relationships with potential partners, both in terms of program delivery as partner sites, as well as building those corporate relationships, and then relationships with individual donors and grantors. And like I said, we were founded in September, and March was supposed to be really our first month where we sat down with donors to talk about specific large investments. And then of course, all of those meetings got postponed or canceled due to COVID-19 and then the economic fallout. So we've been really scrambling sort of in a grassroots effort to raise funding, and have been successful in raising about $15,000 on our own, but are continuing to build relationships with those corporate sponsors. We recently received our 501c3 designation, which has opened a lot of doors. But once we have completed phase 1, which is really starting to build out those partner sites, we're looking to offer 8 clubs a week next year. And that would look like 2 clubs an afternoon at a single partner site, and then to do that 4 days a week. If we're able to reach that goal, then we should be able to serve about 600 students next year. And as we scale up, add that maker space, get our storefront, we're hoping to be able to offer our clubs and programs out into the community at large to build more of a fee-for-service model, enrollment fees, having some income, and then eventually roll out into what we're calling our multi-site expansion. And you can see that in the right-hand corner. We have a vision that includes sort of serving or using Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Lawton as our 3 metro hubs, and then developing a fleet of maker spaces or maker mobiles that can travel to other parts of the state to bring these programs out into communities that maybe don't have access to them. And so when it comes to talking to you guys about what we need, it's really, we need access to funding, whether that's individuals, corporate sponsors. Because we are a nonprofit, money is probably gonna always be our biggest need. But like I said, we've raised enough to launch 7 clubs next year, but our goal was 50. And each of our clubs costs around $1,800 to produce. And so we feel like that's a really reasonable number to ask a company to come in and say, hey, for $1,800, we can provide 12 students with 8 weeks of curriculum and programming. Would you like to come alongside us, A, to develop the curriculum, B, to help us provide some mentorship and some community exposure for your company, but then C, to really start developing that workforce that you're gonna need here in the future. Let's get them plugged in now so that we don't lose them. And with that, I will open it up to questions. I'm going to move you guys over here so I'm not looking on my second screen.
Morgan, it's Brent with Ratkinson. I have a question regarding getting students involved. We occasionally will do field trips where teachers will bring their students out to the data center. We'll give them a tour of the data center and try to help them connect with how a data center affects them on a daily basis. So recently we did a virtual tour. My wife is an educator, and of course they were working on Zoom and doing a lot of their lessons on Zoom. And she was trying to explain to them how that happened. And so we gave a virtual tour to her class of our data center space and what that did, and try to incorporate those two. Do you have businesses in the community that are, in a position to offer real life examples of how STEM meets the need for the workforce?
That is part of what we're working on now, is building those relationships with those corporations in the STEM network. Almost half of our board, so we've got 7 board members, half of our board is in oil and gas. And so we've got connections in all phases of the oil and gas process. We're starting to work our way into tech. And I'm an architect actually by trade. So we've got connections in architecture, engineering, and construction, but we're trying to build our networks and expand our networks so that we can have access to everyone really in the STEM ecosystem. Health technologies is a big need for us. But that is one of those things. We want to bring the corporate partners in because we don't want to be training kids for something that's not available in Oklahoma. We want them to stay here. And you'll see, I mean, from our plan, we are all about Oklahoma. And so how do we connect our education, both informal and formal education, to that workforce?
A follow-up question, in STEAM you have the A for the arts. Can you kind of talk into that a little bit, how technology and tech relates to arts in the community as well, and how important that is for students?
Sure. So I am very passionate about arts, and don't necessarily lead with that because there's a lot of great groups already focusing on arts education. But for us, arts are an on-ramp into STEM for students who might be overwhelmed with the idea of coming in and learning something engineering or tech related. But if you can bring a student to a class and it's an arts class or it's a sewing class, and then you can introduce them to sewable circuits, and then at the end of the class you can say, oh, by the way, you just did electronics. The students go, I did what? And so it's more of an on-ramp and a way for us to incorporate creativity and encourage creativity. But for us, the arts aren't necessarily our means. They're an end to the mean, which is that meaningful technical employment down the road.
Yeah, I think there's this connotation that the tech world or the STEM world is not creative. And what I'm finding is that's really not true. There are a lot of creative people in the STEM world that just have to figure out where to apply that creativity in what field and in what industry.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Any other questions from the audience?
If there aren't any other questions, one thing I wanted to mention, I know Morgan touched on this briefly, but when we look at the population of the youth that needs this.
Well, Morgan, you touched on this a little bit, but as I mentioned in the first presentation,
Sorry, someone was speaking.
I think Todd was kind of following up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you. The only other thing I mentioned is that we talk about youth that wouldn't normally qualify for these technical programs because they may not have the resources. That's a big focus for us. So a portion of our funding goes to scholarships and aid for the underrepresented communities. To really focus on Southside Oklahoma City, where they may be struggling for very basic needs, food, resources, things like that. And we, through more, collaborated with our neighborhood Empowered, to really transport those students into these programs, to get them resources, to get them lunches. They don't have to worry about those things. And then
you're breaking up.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the underrepresented communities as well?
A little bit more, yeah. So for us, the reason that we've really pursued the nonprofit route as opposed to like a for-profit that provides STEM education, I know there's Code Academy, there's other groups that are out there providing the for-profit classes to students who can afford them. But for us, we want to reach those kids that are underrepresented in STEM, and we recognize that for a lot of them, they either don't have the financial resources to pursue those classes, but they may also not have the inclination to pursue those classes or the support from family. And by working with partner sites and doing our best to try and offer it at no cost to these students, we're exposing students who otherwise might not have exposure to something outside of the classroom. And that's what's been so great just in the couple of programs we've completed through the library and Our Neighborhood Empowered is these students are getting a chance to do something that isn't graded for the first time in their life, where they're getting to create something and learn about Newton and his 3 laws and the different forces in physics. And then they're getting asked to apply those, and they get to have the chance to fail and answer a question wrong without being worried about a grade. And for a lot of them, it's the first time that they've gotten to do that because they just don't have access to those opportunities outside of school.
Thank you, Morgan.
Other questions?
Morgan, not really a question, but just like to meet up with you at some point offline and see what kind of help and resources we might be able to offer you guys.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of folks here that like to help and volunteer, and we've got a lot of equipment and components and circuits stuff that we do. So, you know, there's all kinds of resources here that you guys might be able to share with us a little bit, or we might be able to share with you a little bit rather.
That would be fantastic.
Thank you.
We haven't necessarily pursued robotics at the moment because that hasn't been a strength of mine. It's on my list of things I'd love to bring in, but it probably requires a really dedicated volunteer or staff member. But there are some really great robotics programs I'd love to participate in.
Right. As Amber mentioned, that robotics covers so many different fields. You know, we have mechanical, we have electronics, we have circuit board design and programming. So it sounds like you're doing a number of those things already. So there's certainly areas where we might be able to complement each other there.
Morgan, it's Brent again. How can people connect with you guys or volunteer or be a part of what you guys are doing?
So I will pop my email address as well as our website in there. But if you would want to follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn, we're available there. If you are interested in volunteering, there's a form on our website. If you are interested in participating financially, feel free to email, do whatever you need to. We have lots of opportunities for developing what that engagement looks like, both in the immediate and long term. And so if investing today isn't something you or your company can do, but you want to talk about what that might look like down the road, happy to have those conversations. And if there's anyone you know that might be interested either in the concept or serving on our board, we've got a few more board positions open. We're really looking for people with a marketing or communications background, as well as a few more with financial background, whether that's understanding nonprofit finances or a CPA or an audit background, somebody that can just make sure that we're using best practices as we create our processes. We've got a few more seats that we'd like to fill by the end of the year. But I'll make sure and drop those links here in the chat box shortly.
Okay, awesome. Can you guys hear me okay? I was being a little glitchy earlier.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so thank you to both of our presenters today. I love the connections already happening between the speakers. And I think the STEM themed event was a lot of fun. So we got 2 more orders of business before we go. One is we're gonna do a quick poll. I know a lot of you helped us with a poll in July to help us decide for an August event, or in June to help us decide for the July event. I know the situation with COVID has changed quite a bit, again, with the spike in cases, and there just aren't a lot of meetups that are meeting in person yet, which is why we chose to stay virtual for July. But we're still trying to gather data and plan for the future. So if you would just drop in the chat the number that best fits your answer to the question, would you attend a 1MC event in person in August? Can you guys see the question?
Yeah, we don't see your screen yet, Susan.
Oh no, okay. I was afraid of that.
Susan, I will say that if you go down to the bottom of your screen where it says polls, the poll is actually live and you can answer it there as well.
Okay. I tried to start the poll during the Zoom call, and I think that's what made me glitchy. I cannot make that poll live, Evan, can you?
Yeah, it's going.
Okay, perfect. Well, I can't see any of that, so thank you. And then once the poll's been open for a minute or two, we will do our final gift card giveaway.
I think we've got most of the respondents, and we can keep it going during the gift card trivia if you want.
Awesome. Okay, so we will ask a question that was answered during the presentations today. Type your answer in the chat, and the first correct response will win the coffee and Brown's Bakery gift cards from Rack 59. And the question is, how much does it cost to sponsor one of the Steam Engine's STEM clubs? And organizers, I also can't see the chat, so you're gonna have to.
Looks like
Cassidy McKnight.
What?
Yeah,
Cassidy?
that was a
Big
fast
winner.
answer. I'm impressed.
Awesome, Cassidy. We know how to contact you, so Brent will get in touch and we'll.
Lennon, if you would like to pay $18,000 to sponsor one of the clubs, I'm sure Morgan would not turn you down.
100%.
So
You
checks
wanted to-
payable to
100%.
steamengineokc.org.
That's right. That's right. Make that
Gonna
check
be huge.
payable.
If you want to pay $18,000, we'll throw in an extra set of Starbucks and Brown's Bakery gift cards.
I will do that. I'd be happy to do that.
Sounds like you guys have found your development director.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, everyone, for being here this morning for yet another virtual event. I know people are getting tired of Zoom, but our 1 Million Cups community is really valued, both among the attendees and the speakers. So we really are grateful that you guys keep showing up every month. So we'll be back again in August on the second Wednesday of the month, one way or the other. So follow us on our website, 1millioncups.com/OKC, and you'll get updates about what the next event will look like and who the speakers are going to be. So thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you all.
Have a great week.
You too.